see the path to the championship. I can see it.
The Coca-Cola 600 belongs to Ryan Blaney.
Blaney's learned how to win over the last couple of months.
Blaney! Harmon! They spin behind him! It's going to be Blaney!
We're going to win this thing.
Ryan Blaney is going to win his way into the championship for...
You have to run a perfect race to get it.
Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR Cup Series champion!
What an unbelievable year. What an unbelievable playoffs for us.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 143 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media back in 2014. Each weekly episode of the show offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and special guest interviews all throughout the year. This week, we break down Team 12's run in the Goodyear 400 at Darlington Raceway. Steve, welcome back for another episode of the Team Blaney Podcast, fresh off the race at Darlington. We've got some exciting stuff coming along the way in the show, luckily, to possibly pick us up and add a little time to a show that could potentially be, could have been one of the shortest of the year, I think.
Well, you know, we could talk a little bit to get our anger and rage out, at least, you know. I asked you if we wanted to record last night, and it's probably a good thing we didn't, just because I'd have been like ready to wrestle somebody last night. So, you know, a day and a little bit of sleep and some thought, and maybe I'll be able to articulate better my feelings. You know, it's better than climbing out of the race car and trying to punch somebody.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate circumstances that happened in a race that I honestly we went into, and I didn't really have like a lot like super high hopes about it. But what happened in the first stage, really got my hopes up, and then it was just dashed. And then, like you said, the rest of the night was basically kind of going through all the stages of grief.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with it after that. I mean, it was so weird, you're watching them. Because we got the in-car thing, still watching them trying to fix the car, and then once they do pull away from pit lane, the craziness that happened for a couple seconds there, and then pulling the car in the garage, and then the engine guys right away got to look and make sure the engine's okay, and it just during all that you're ready to punch somebody, you just want to go find that guy or those two guys as Ryan was ready to mess up two guys, and. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about being an innocent bystander.
Well, for anyone that may have missed the race somehow, don't know what happened, let's just jump into it because we're just going to keep talking in circles about how mad we were. But let's start off with, I don't want to say happier news because it wasn't super great, but practice and qualifying went okay.
Yeah, practice was interesting to say the least, because they were literally keeping track of Darlington stripes during practice because most of these guys we're trying to see how close to the wall they can get without hitting it. And Ryan was in Group B. Group A, the Fast Five were like the 34, the 54, the 17, the 20, the 24. And that was a gap of like from 29.02 to 29.24. And I'm pointing that out because you could be sixth in that group and only be, just 0.2 of a second away. And it's like everybody's like panicking, at that distance. But a track that size, that's pretty close. About 8 minutes to go in Group A, Tim comes on, talks about what line everybody's running. The 17 was actually one of the top cars in the lap averages at that point. So Group B early on, the 11 was the fastest with a 29.31. Ryan at lap 3 puts up a 29.43. And then he hits the fence in 2 of all places. Not even 3 and 4. It was actually up in 2. And right away they just, let's bring it in and take a look at it. They'd only run 6 laps. The time was good for 6th best in the group for an individual lap. They come back out with about 7 minutes to go. Tim talks to Jonathan about how the laps compare to other lap 8s. And this was something that I think I popped in the Discord real quick and was people, were asking about that because at that point, Tim's timing and scoring just showed everybody on the track at that point. Well, Ryan is literally running only his 8th lap where everybody's on like their 20th some lap, so as far as tire wears, where were they at tire wear wise to everybody else on their 8th or 9th lap. But Jonathan says they're in the ball game. So they must have thought, any little adjustment they had made was good, pretty good. Fast 5 were 11, the 23, the 5, the 38, and the 2. And like I said, this gap was from 29.31 to 29.43 with Ryan right there at that edge. So that was just a little over a tenth between the first and the 5th. So we get to qualifying here, and Group A, the Fast 5 were the 17, the 45, 19, 54, 24. Excuse me. And Tim talks about the guy shifting going into 3. Jonathan says, yes, your ears don't deceive you, because he's literally going off the sound that some of those cars are making. And Ryan goes out 14th in Group B. When he comes on the radio, he asks Tim where the guys are coming to the green at. So how are they coming out of 3 and 4 coming to the green? He ends up P9 in the group. 0.062 out of 5th. So just about half a tenth. Half of a tenth.
Super close.
And there's 3 cars between him and 5th that were in that. So, for the sky is falling types that were all like, oh, the Fords are horrible, and they're in this and this and that, and they're Penske and blah. It's a matter of whether or not they messed up a little tiny bit in one of the turns, or just didn't do something right, or, somebody else did something way better. It's not a matter of the car being bad or the driver being really bad. 0.062 is extremely close. So the Fast 5 for there were the 5, the 11, the 23, the 6, and the 5. It said 11, 23, 6, 5, and 1. Sorry. This puts Ryan P17 for the start, and the 45 gets the pole. So kind of looked like it was going to be one of those 23-11 kind of weekends, because I think the 9 or the 23 was up there too. So we get to Sunday, excuse me, stages of 90, 185, and 293, 11 sets of tires, fuel run of 68 to 75, no cars to the rear, even though a bunch of them brushed the wall during practice. It was all cosmetic. Pit stall 30 with the 15 in front of them and an opening behind, which is awesome because the 15 will be at some point a lap down, I'm sure. And the opening behind makes it even easier. And they get to the start here, and by lap 4, he's up to 21st. But he's having a hard time getting to the high lane. So basically, he kind of got stuck and pinned down low. At lap 5, passing the 7, gets to 19th. At lap 9, passes the 47, gets to 18th. At lap 16, he rubs the wall in 3 and 4 with no damage. So kind of like went up there, peaked up there as high as he could. And by lap 20, the 45 is still leader. Ryan is in 18th, 14 seconds back of the lead, and only about a half a second back of the 14, who's in 17th. Now, at lap 30, Jonathan says we're at least 5 to 10 laps to pitting. So that's a kind of an indication. When Jonathan comes on and does that, he's not only just kind of like keeping everybody alert, but he also will get feedback pretty quickly from Ryan. It's kind of his way of telling Ryan, okay, so I'm telling you pretty soon, you tell me so we can get ready for some changes. And Ryan gives the feedback at lap 35. A few cars actually start to pit, and Jonathan says we're going to run a bit longer. So I think what happened is a couple of these cars come in early, and this changes the strategy a little bit for the 12 team because they decide they're going to go longer, and this is going to help at the after they pit and at the end of the stage. So lap 37, Jonathan says 9 more. And, he says, basically, if you pit early now, you're going to pay the price later. That's what I have written in parentheses, because what will happen is these guys are going to have to run from there to the end of the stage, and way longer than they want to on those tires. The lap 40 now, the 23 is the leader, and Ryan's in second. Ryan's 11 seconds back of the leader.
Yeah, this is like a nerve-wracking part, too, because you just don't know. we know like what needs to happen in order for this to be a success. And I honestly actually think it could have gone like two ways too. Like they stay out long, but it needs to be long enough to where if a caution comes out, maybe everybody wants to come back down and get tires again anyway. Or if they, stay out long, and then or caution comes out a little bit too early in their attempt to stay out long, it kind of throws things off too. So, I mean, I just for once was like, praying to the racing gods, like, can we just see another one of these like cool strategies like play out and not have something weird happen?
Yeah. So at that point, some of the cars that pitted had already pitted start coming by, because they are running that much faster a lap, 2 seconds faster a lap. So lap 44 to 23 pits, Ryan actually took the lead here for a lap, then pitted the next lap. This pit stop is a 10.411, which is actually for green flag pitting is pretty good. And at lap 47 now, when things have kind of like sorted back out onto the track, he's in 30th. Okay. Now, except for Bubba Wallace, everybody else in front of Ryan has 10 to 15 laps on their tires already. And like you were saying about the strategy playing out, part of the problem with this is now you have to pick your way through the field. You are faster, way faster than a lot of them. You're going to catch them. You're going to get by some of them. Does lap traffic get in the way? How far can you go before things equalize out? Will they really equalize out? Because like I said, a lot of these guys now are going to run those 10 to 15 extra laps they have on their tires all the way to the end of the stage. So you're going to be better than them. And literally at the end of the stage, he was still 3 or 4 tenths better than the guys in front of him. And he was catching them. But on lap 47 into lap 48 here, he passes the 51, the 99, the 43, the 21, and the 10 right off the bat. We knock those guys out. Lap 48 passes the 20, passes somebody up there and gets to 25th. Lap 49 past the 41, gets to 24th. The 54 is the leader at this point. Lap 55, we pass the 9. Lap 56 past the 4. At lap 57 past the 77. Lap 60 past the 42. At lap 61 passes the 7. This is all the way to 19th. Tim says you got 10 lap better tires, and so then the next cars you're chasing. So lap 65 to pass the 8. Lap 66 passes the 2. Lap 67 passes the 34. Some of the guys are coming backward at them too, as their stuff wore out really fast. Lap 67 passes the 14. 69 passes the 48. Lap 70 passes the 1. Lap 79, we get a twofer. We pass the 22 and the 20. We're up to 11th now. Lap 82 passes the 11. So we're now into the top 10. The 5 has taken the lead at this point. And he's passing some lap cars in here for a couple laps. And then lap 86, we pass the 23 up to 9th. Now, there's a car who had pitted 2 laps before him, was 11 seconds ahead of him on the track. But as his stuff wore out, it wore out way faster. And Ryan actually, with traffic and so forth and carving through traffic, and did a better job of it than the 23, and he passes him. At lap 89, he passed the 24, gets to 8th. And by the end of the stage here, lap 90, the 5 wins the stage, and Ryan gets to 8th. And it was breathtaking to watch. In-car camera, pretty much make your passes in the low lane. Just get up underneath and go, get up underneath and go, get up underneath and go. And like I said, right at the beginning, it was like about 2 seconds faster. And as it went, sure, he started to lose a little bit of it. And it was only a second. And then it was only like a half a second. But some of the other ones are coming back to him too. They were going backwards. So
I know we are like evangelists for the in-car camera. And this is like the perfect example of when it is so great to have that pulled up while you're watching the race, because you get to see all these passes. We did get to see most of them done with ease. I would say the 2 scary spots were 1 passing the 1, Ross Chastain, because he's difficult to pass no matter what. So he kind of held up, or not held him up, but held side door to door with him for a little bit before he got by. And then Bubba's another guy too. He wants to keep his position on track, especially since they're on a similar strategy too. He probably put up the most fight, doing a little bit of a crossover move and running door to door too before he made that pass. So we'll say it a lot. Pull up the in-car camera. There's 2 ways you could do it. You could get it for free we'll have some ads that will pop in and out throughout the day. But if you are a subscriber through the app that gets you the scanner and everything else, ad free, it's not that super expensive, and it's a really fantastic experience, especially if once things kind of sync up. I've noticed sometimes like it'll be out of sync a little bit with my TV, but halfway through the race it syncs up pretty good, and I can watch the pit stop. And that's the other thing too, if they're not showing Ryan's pit stops, you can watch the pit stops through the window. And you kind of it's funny, it's like the carrier is like sometimes my sense of knowing if it's going to be a good stop or not, whether he gets around the car as fast as everybody else. So really cool to watch that. But man, it was, like you said, breathtaking is a good way to describe that whole sequence of going from 30th all the way up to 8th. And I was kind of fired up now because I said, going into this race, Ryan had a couple of top 10s at Darlington the last few races. So he's gotten a little bit better, but still not one of his really good tracks. Ford's had been struggling up until really this race. And so I didn't really have high expectations, but man, now they were like through the roof. I'm like, we can go out. Well, they can go out, have a really good run here. Already got some stage points off of an awesome strategy that we had the opportunity to see play out for once. So, my excitement meter was pegged. And unfortunately, I feel like that's part of the reason why, I was also upset, at the results of this race.
Well, that's the part that's to follow here too, is that the execution unfortunately doesn't show the result of the day, but this next couple sequences, before that issue, they talk about Ryan says it fired off more neutral, it built free. I was talking about vibration, through the tires of some sort, but Jonathan says everybody was having that vibration at the end of the run because they were on their tires, pretty long. And Ryan tells him, he says, great strategy call there. And Jonathan says, way to drive the tires off of it, because it was a combination. It was the call itself, but then the driver executing, taking advantage of what was given to him and just blowing guys away. Now, they're pitting from P8. The stop is a 9.276. Now, TV shows a couple other stops that were like sub 9, which is excellent. It really is. But 9.276 is really excellent too. So much so they gained 2 spots on pit road here, come off 6th. So for the next restart here, the 45's the leader and taking the top, and a restart lap 98. Ryan takes the top 2, so he's up in the higher lane. He, sorts out the 6th, but at lap 111, Tim tells them they're the fastest car on the track, which is always great to hear because you get they get on their computer, it kind of like highlights whoever the fastest car was that lap, and when it pops up, it's really cool to see. Lap 115, about 0.037 back of the 5 car, who's in 5th, and about a little over 5 seconds back of the 45, who's in 1st. And at lap 121, we get a caution for the 42. Ryan wants it's a little more snug. He wants a little more snug maybe than that first adjustment, and they're going to do 4 tires, hitting from 6th. This took a little while. They're waiting for a wrecker to clear the pit road out. But they do head and pit, and they gain a position on pit road here with a 9.375. So the elements you need to have a great race, to finish top 5 or have a chance to win, you've got great strategy call to get the track position back. And now all of a sudden it's the pit road part of things, the pit road war. And the first 2 pit stops of that, we've gained 3 spots in 2 pit stops. So they're going to restart with 57 to go in the stage, lap 129 here. And the 45 and the 54 are in the high lane in front of Ryan. Good position. The high lane on these restarts, especially near the front, is the place to be. Push the guys in front of you, try to get out there, try to beat the low lane a little bit. And as you're doing that, maybe you gain a position that way, and then when things sort out, then you go ahead and chase. And the thing is you're supposed to sort out from the 2 lanes into 1 lane on these restarts, especially at Darlington. Darlington is kind of a 1-lane track for the most part, especially down to 3 and 4, unless you're really handling better than the other guy. And they get to 1 and 2, and some guy decides that 3 lanes would be a good idea. And
how'd that go?
Not well for everybody involved except him. He ends up being, I don't want to use bad words. You got your beep button ready over there? I know the TV, the TV needed it for sure. Just hit it a couple of times just to make sure. No, that's the thing is he goes low. The 24 goes low, gets underneath the 11 and the 12. The 12's against the wall. 11 is the monkey in the middle.
19, but
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, what I was saying. 19. I don't know why I said 11. The 19 is the monkey in the middle there. Martin is stuck, and for some reason, because the post race interview, the 24 made it sound like, well, it was his right to be there. My car was turning better than everybody else's, so I could do this. But after talking to a bunch of people in the racing business, and etiquette was the word I used last night, etiquette was the word I used today, etiquette will be the word I use forever. That track at the end of turn 2 goes from 2 lanes down to 1 almost, and they have to kind of start to sort things out pretty quickly within a lap or 2. You can't do it too long. And the guy who goes 3 wide, Williams' explanation was, well, he thought he had it, and he thought he was in front of the 19. And so you go 3 wide, and then you're going to slide up the track. You're going to end up doing a little bit of a slide job. And so the 11 is just supposed to back off because the 11 was at your door. You didn't clear him. You weren't clear of him. He was still at your door. The nose of his car was at your door. And Ryan pretty much threw the turn by the end of turn 2, before the actual contact happens, was even with the 24. So the guy up on the wall, there was no way you would clear him either. And you wiggle, and then the 11 ends up the 19 ends up wiggling into Ryan, and Ryan tail slaps the wall, knocks everything loose back there that they end up trying to fix. The right rear toe link. They're on pit road for basically, I thought the clock had run out, but they do end up coming off pit road. And this was another thing about the in-car camera. They come off pit road, and I was still watching the in-car camera, and I jumped out of my seat because it looked like he was like heading toward him like a missile.
Yeah, I was
he was heading toward the 24 up the track, and I'm like, oh, he's going to send a message. And this is something too that it's a message I think that needs to be sent at this point. Some people were saying it's the 3rd or 4th time this year that he has caused Ryan an issue on the track. We know Daytona for sure, and I can't remember the other ones. Maybe somebody will text or send a message after they listen to the podcast. Let us know what the other ones were. But there was, and it's a good thing he didn't, because it probably would have been some sort of fine and suspension because it happened under caution and everything else. And Ryan's post race, somebody asked him about that, and he says, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done that because the car really wasn't handling well." He says he almost did end up bumping into him when he turned it sideways because the stuff wasn't fixed totally.
It looked really, really close. I mean, like you said, I had the same reaction. I mean, I shouted, "Whoa!" And I think it was during a commercial break and stuff. And man, it did seem super close, but it's uncharacteristic for Ryan, really. I think so. Oddly enough, there's maybe some. So in this, I think it was in this race last year, not the Southern 500. Byron actually spun the 11 under caution because he was upset with him. And I believe he got a fine. He may have gotten a points penalty at first and a fine, but I think they might have reduced it to just a fine. So that was, that already shows you. And that's not the first incident I think he's had. He had an incident with Joey Logano in the race that Logano won in the spring too, where Logano thought that he had kind of roughed him up. And so he paid him back and went on to win the race. So it's unfortunate. The guy has 3 wins already this year. Obviously, super talented driver, no question about that. Is going to be a championship contender again this year. But man, you can't do that stuff. And Ryan post race was asked about the the near door swipe that he tried to give him coming out of the pits, and he said, no, I wasn't going to hit him. I'm going to save that for later.
Yeah.
So, which drivers say that a lot, but who knows?
They don't always do it. I mean, this weekend would be a fine weekend to do it. I mean, it's the All-Star race. They won't be going quite as fast on that track, you know.
I want it to hurt the points wise. I don't want there's no points on the line, and there's not a lot of money on the line either. So,
well, could do like that in the playoffs last year. Certain teammates don't make the next round, then all of a sudden they become little helpers out there, you know, making sure that certain people don't make a very, very good finish. So they do restart right after that with the 45 leading. I don't have a lot of notes from that point forward. I mean, the third stage ends up being pretty exciting, really. Brad, with their strategy calls, and their car took off and took the lead for a little bit. And then he gets passed in a twofer because he's trying to race with 45, and then the 17 comes by both of them. And then he kind of loses that position to the.
That was an exciting restart, though, right? The 6 and 45 side by side, multiple laps. For a while, there wasn't contact, then eventually there was contact, and that big sweeping move I wish I was there in person. That sweeping move down the front stretch, right in front of the fans. I mean,
he went way, way low too to get around him. He made sure he was way low around them. I had the in-car actually switched over to the 6 car and was listening to 6 car audio because I was really at that point forward, really rooting for Brad. I mean, as a Blaney fan, Brad has always been very integral to why Ryan is where he is today, you know. So rooting for Brad, and then he ends up in third, and then I'm watching the laps tick down in the last 15 laps, 10 laps, and he's gaining on the 45 while the 17's leading. And I think, oh, well, if he can get to the 45, and then, who knows at that point. And the 45 is gaining on the 17 at that point. So I'm thinking, boy, if they get too wide up there, maybe he can pull off that move, you know? And sure enough, you get,
they get too wide for a second.
And what's bad is Brad comes up behind them by the start finish line after that little contact, and he doesn't go around them. He can't quite pull it off. And that was his chance. And he was trying to make sure he didn't wreck with all three of them, you know. And then within the next lap, you've got them both pulling off with tire issues. You know, the 45 pulls off, the 17 pulls off, and then Brad takes the lead with about 8 or 10 to go, and then just ticks the laps down, make sure the 54 doesn't catch him. So, great win. Post race was really, really interesting because you get this dynamic where Buescher gets out of his car, and he goes. It's basically 2 cars behind him. I think he has to go past.
Parked right by each other.
I think the 54 was the next one behind him, because there's pictures of Gibbs just making sure he gets out of the way. He was like, I'm not gonna be in the middle of it. He's like, oh, that guy looks wild. So he goes by Gibbs and a couple crew guys, and he doesn't do it in a manner that looks violent. You know, and the camera's following him. They did a good job being ready to follow him. And then he kind of pushes Tyler with a little shove, nothing real bad. And then the yelling commences, and I will give. It's horrible what happened to Chris, but I will give Tyler Reddick all the credit in the world, because he said it. He said, I messed up. He says, I tried to back out and it was too late. He says, I thought I could pull it off and I didn't. I didn't mean to wreck you or anybody else. He comes out and he just blatantly says it. And I give him all the credit in the world, because if you listen to Williams' post-race interview, it's word salad, and he doesn't take blame for anything. He tries to justify everything with a lot of words, trying to be technical about what he did and how he was able to do it. And, he does kind of say that he didn't want to wreck anybody, but, there's, wrecking somebody and admitting that you wrecked somebody, or there's making up your own verbiage to justify your moves. And that's what William did. Like I said, that's why I'll give Tyler all the credit in the world, because Tyler did it in the last 10 laps of a race where he was trying to win the race. He didn't do it halfway through the race, causing people's days to end. He did it with the race on the line, trying to make the move that would give him the win. And then he admits that he made the mistake. So, all the credit in the world to Tyler, and all the credit in the world to Chris too, because Chris makes that makes the charge toward him, and it looks like he wants to fight, but then he doesn't fight, and he listens. He stops and he listens, and he hears the guy apologize, and he's mad. He really is mad, but he gives the guy a chance to apologize, and he gives him his thoughts on it, loudly, but he gives him his thoughts on it, and they probably both feel better off for what they did and how they handled themselves. And it was good. It was good for to see that. Good for NASCAR to see that kind of thing.
So a few things that I'd point out. One, Tyler, man, diffuse that situation immediately by just not even, because sometimes guys will try to make excuses first and then apologize, but right out of the gate, like you said, apology. Chris did come back with the that doesn't really mean anything, doesn't do much for me. You need to be better. Thought it was a pretty great exchange, add a little bit to the excitement. Second thing, Ryan's interview. It's funny because he was trying to be pretty diplomatic, kind of almost in that vein of, that racing hard, and yeah, maybe didn't give us enough room, but you could tell they start playing the replay for him, and he's like, oh, he really didn't, give it, and then changed his tune. And then in subsequent interviews he did for like radio and some of the other media in the scrum, he got a little bit more mad about it, I would say, which I think was totally justified, because I think even he himself was probably, I don't want to say surprised, but pretty happy with the run they had going. He knew, he was in the top 5 at that point when he gets taken out. So that was unfortunate. Tyler, overall, I said this to you when we chatted a little bit before, that I feel like he had a few more laps. He could have probably waited a little bit longer, made a more calculated pass. He was already faster than the 17. He was catching them, as the run went on towards the end. So I think he honestly gave away a win just as much as he took a win away from the 17. So I do feel like the 17 maybe was going to race him a lot harder than he raced the 5, when he got door slammed twice for the win. So, but tell you what, Chris Buescher, it's cool to see. I know we're Blaney fans, but it's cool to see a guy that, got his first win in the fog at Pocono a long time ago, and then a huge stretch between wins here. He makes, stops at, JTG, comes back to Roush Fenway, and Brad coming over has essentially rejuvenated Chris's career. And 4 wins later, probably 3 or 4 he could have won. So kudos to him, but big time kudos to Brad, the old boss man for Ryan, who, like you said, was integral into getting Ryan his opportunity at Team Penske for sure. A lot of great times, when Ryan was running for Brad's truck team. And I think I mentioned this to a couple of people in the Discord. It actually took Brad a long time to win in his truck too. So it's kind of funny that it took a couple of years here, pretty like 2.5 years or whatever, to finally win in his own, cup car that he part owns too. So that was great. If I was there, I would have stood up and cheered too. So kudos to them. And at least Ford's kind of got this monkey off their back now too, to finally get in the victory lane.
I don't know if I texted you but right before it happened, right before the 17, the 45 hit, watching, like I said, I'm watching the 6 SynCar camera, and I started to get this Darlington 2003 vibe. I started to get that vibe. I started to feel like those 2 guys up there are going to bang and beat and bang on each other, and then the 6 is going to be back here and just hoping for that opportunity, hoping for that chance.
Yeah, that's what Dave needed, right? And Brad got it.
One or two of them bangs and beats they did on each other back then. Who knows? Would have been just enough, and he could have got by them. But I started to feel that way about Brad back there. I'm like, he's going to finish 3rd, and he'll be watching all this action in front of him. But then it worked out totally in his favor. So
all of this, Ryan ends up finishing dead last in the race. So that's unfortunate. Really unfortunate when it comes to the point standings, because the 5 crashes out of this race. The 45 obviously has his issues, and he finishes way down the leaderboard as well. Denny Hamlin and Chase kind of had ho-hum days. Truex was running really well up until the same incident Ryan was in. He finishes back in the 20 plus. So Ryan had if he would have been able to stay clean, and again, this wasn't any of his doing, he had an opportunity to maybe leapfrog some more people in the points and gain some more points on the leader, Kyle Larson, here. But that doesn't happen. The only, light at the end of the tunnel here is the fact, or the positive thing to come out of this is because everybody ahead of him had all this trouble, he didn't slip that much in the point standings. He does fall 2 positions, but only loses 15 points to the leader. So he was minus 100 last week. Now he's in the 8th position, minus 115 to the leader, Kyle Larson. So the top 10 goes like this: Kyle Larson in first, followed by Truex, Hamlin, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney again in 8th, 115 back, Alex Bowman in 9th, who's kind of putting together a quiet, good season right now, and Ross Chastain in 10th. With the win, Brad Keselowski vaults 4 positions in the standings up to the 11th position, 142 back of the leader, and with that win locks himself into the playoffs. So like I said, really unfortunate because it could have been a great opportunity for the 12 team to catch up in points here. But luckily, with the issues that happened out front, he didn't lose too much ground. So I didn't tip people off at the beginning of the show like I should have, but I'm going to tell them now because we're going to do our fantasy recap next. But I want to make sure that you don't tune out now because we have a very special guest interview coming up in the second part of the show. And Steve, can you talk a little bit about who you have booked for this week on the Team Blaney podcast in our next crew member interview?
Yes, we're gonna. That's the thing. Crew member is the way to go. We've been able to get some of the guys from the pit crew, and finally was able to reach out to Jourdan Osinskie, Jackman for Team 12, and he's excited to come on the show here in a couple minutes and give us some of his time and great insight into the Jackman on this pit crew right now that's just totally clicking. So hopefully we don't jinx that, but can't wait for that interview coming up here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that interview. We'll also do a little bit of a preview for the NASCAR All-Star race coming up this weekend at North Wilkesboro, but we do have some things to finish up from this race this past week at Darlington, and that involves the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. We'll go through our starters and our results. Honestly, it turned out to be a pretty great week for me. It did not look good at the beginning, but it worked out well in the end. I ended up 14th overall with 183 points earned. My starters: Brad Keselowski, 57 points. Chris Buescher, 15 points. But man, if he would have just finished in finished out a little bit better, got that win, probably would have worked out a little bit, a lot better for me. Only got me 15 points, but he probably would have gotten me 30 plus 40. William Byron got me 38. Denny Hamlin got me 36. Ross Chastain got me 27. And I had Martin Truex Jr. in the garage. Didn't touch him because of that incident that happened. 18 points I left in the garage. Featured matchups: I picked Hamlin over Byron. That was correct. I picked Reddick over Logano. That was incorrect, but it would have been right. I picked Elliott over Chastain. That was wrong by 1 position. And then I picked Kyle Busch over Christopher Bell. That was also wrong. Man, Kyle Busch showed some speed in practice. Has had speed the last couple of weeks with some good finishes. Thought they turned some things around. Another rough weekend for Kyle Busch, finishing 27th. So didn't do well in the featured matchups, but I made up for it in my starters. So how'd things go for you?
Horrible. That's only one way to put it. Horrible. I had, I did this thing, usually I look at it before the end of stage 3 and see who's gotten stage points. And if nobody's wrecked out, then that's where I make a move, maybe just to make sure the guy with the most stage points and he's still running up front. And then as long as nothing happens in stage 3, I'm great. I'm golden. But I'm going to read a couple names to you, and this will tell you how it went. Chris Buescher, Kyle Larson, and Tyler Reddick.
Ouch.
Yes. Finished 30th, 34th, and 32nd. I had Byron and I had Bubba Wallace, who finished 6th and 7th overall, and were some of the top point getters. But I had Hamlin in the garage, and that would have been fine to have him in the lineup. But hindsight's 2020. You don't know all those things are going to happen in the third stage, especially with three of your guys. I had Denny over Byron. I had Tyler over Joey, which should have been a win. I had Chastain over Elliott, and I had Bell over Kyle Busch. So I had 3 of the 4, and it should have been 4 of the 4. If none of those goofy things happened to those 3 guys, I would have been top 10 pretty easily.
So again, you finished way down the leaderboard here, 52nd overall, tied for 52nd. Mez 12, 157 points earned. I finished again in the 14th position, a tie there as well, 183 points earned. Let's take a look at the top 10. That actually starts with a tie for 9th with Fike 21 and Factory of Sadness 6, 192 points. In 8th was Nellis Straightaway. That's a cool one, 194 points earned. A tie for 6 here. We have Blaney Fangirl and our friend Stella Narius, Nicole Chipman, who does the scanner recaps on Twitter, 196 points earned. Another friend of the podcast, Joe Bro, 1221. That's our friend Justin in 5th, 197 points. A tie for 3rd as well. The Prime Minister 3 and Bulldog 0277, 199 points earned. In 2nd was Cheesehead Fan 212, and in the 1st position, winning the weekend at Darlington, Joe Lopez won, 214 points earned. Now let's take a look at the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Trying to close the gap with you, Steve, here. I'm in the 27th position. Team Blaney host Adam, 2,375 points. I will say I am totally outperforming any of my previous teams. I'm normally in the 40s. So being 27th, I'm going to call that a victory for me in the overall standings. You are in 23rd, 2,387 points. So not too far. I think we only have little over 10 points separating us. Top 10 overall standings now. Racers F or Racer SF, 10th position, 2,460 points. In 9th, Blaney or Bust, 2,472. In 8th, Moose Hunter 1960, 2,482. In 7th, we have Penske Fan 24, 2,495. Tie for 5th here, Factory of Sadness 6 and Dr. Race Chaser, 2,512 points. In 4th, we have Blaneyac 10, 2,526 points. 3rd is Alyssa C, 2,533. 2nd, Frank Van 12, 2,535 points. And in the lead still, Go Larson, 2,578 points, and has the overall lead in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. So don't think there are any points on the line this coming weekend for the NASCAR All-Star race at North Wilkesboro Speedway. So we're going to take a week off from fantasy. Maybe a week off from the podcast. We'll see. Steve and I have to discuss. We have historically kind of taken this week off, except for a couple of years ago when we said we'll do one if Ryan wins. And hey, he went to Victory Lane at Texas. So we did an emergency one at Spotter Josh's house. And I thought that was a really cool episode, kind of do that live in the Charlotte area. And so maybe I'll say the same thing again. If Ryan goes out there and wins the All-Star race, Steve and I are definitely going to put some sort of a podcast together. So we teased it a little bit ago, just before we did fantasy. We're going to go now over to our special guest interview for this week's episode of the Team Blaney podcast and get to know a little bit more about another member of Team 12. Well, let's welcome Jourdan Osinskie to the Team Blaney podcast. Jourdan is the jack man for the number 12 Ford Mustang for Ryan Blaney and Team Penske on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit, and he's a crew member with Team 12. And he's another one in a series of interviews we've been doing with members of the team and getting to let everybody else know a little bit more about them. So, Jourdan, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you guys for having me. I'm excited.
Now, first off, before we ask you any questions, for those of you that are listening to this or watching this on video, you got that new body armor jacket. Repping that, right?
Yeah, it's hard not to, man. This is a swaggy of a jacket right here.
What'd you think of the photo shoot? A lot of people like the pictures.
Oh man, I knew it was coming, but I wanted to get some reps in with some of the younger guys just to kind of keep the gears oiled a little bit. And they handed me the jacket and said, "Hey, we're gonna go take some pictures." I'm the only guy out of all of us that's sweaty, like breathing hard. It was a whirlwind of a photo shoot, but it was fun.
So Jourdan mentioned that you're the jack man for Ryan's pit crew, and but you didn't start out that way. So I'm going to go all the way back, maybe to your younger days, maybe high school. Were you involved in a lot of sports? I know you have a football background, but was it just football, or did you participate in everything across the board?
So surprisingly, I spent my whole life playing football, but the actual dream was baseball. I remember, so I spent a little time in Gibsonville, North Carolina, home of Torrey Holt, one of the Los Angeles Rams legends, and I lived across the street from his old house when he was a kid, and we had a park right like diagonal from our neighborhood, and I used to go there and play baseball just by myself, toss a ball up, $20 worth bat, just trying to hit as far as I could. So that was the dream, but football just happened to be the route for me to take that was most beneficial for my size, speed, everything that worked out for it. So yeah, football was probably the staple of my childhood and my teenage years. I went to Catawba College. It's a D2 school in Salisbury, North Carolina. Actually, a very big rival to a previous interviewee of Chris Conklin. We we weren't big fans of each other as far as college campuses back then, but surprisingly, I don't know if he told you, but me and Chris Conklin actually went to the same high school, 10 years apart, Southern Alamance. So there's a lot of different ties in there, but definitely football was the staple for me, and that kind of gave me all the physical attributes that I needed to be I guess now a successful jackman. And we're trying to keep pushing that meter a little farther along.
Now, before you kind of went down the lane into racing and being a pit crew member, I'm sure your dream from college, even from a D2 school, was to try to make your way into the NFL at some point. That did kind of happen a little bit for Chris. He got onto some practice squads and things here and there. Did you ever feel like you had a legitimate shot to go down that path, and were you kind of working towards that?
I definitely had all the confidence in the world to be a player on that national level. It's amazing how it works, because it works the same way as far as being a pit crew member, as far as the eye test and just kind of what you can put out as far as energy and strength and speed. So I ended up going to a pro day at Elon University in Darlington, North Carolina, and at the time it was more so like, let me just say that I could do it. I was battling with a really bad ankle injury at the time, and I still tested really well compared to the other players in the actual NFL draft. In my position, I was titled as a tight end, but I was a little shorter than those guys. A lot of those NFL tight ends were 6'5", 6'6", a solid 260, and I was on the shorter side at 6'2", 240. And the cards just didn't line up for me to kind of be appealing for that position. So I mean, I don't know if you want to get into it now as far as how the opportunity presented itself for me to be a jackman at Penske. I don't want to step too far in any next questions.
Well, sure. I was just actually going to say, so a lot of the other guys we talked to, even road crew members and Flores and some other people, they've kind of come up through racing as it being like the family business, or maybe it was their dream. So they packed their bags and they moved to North Carolina and they slept on somebody's couch, and that's how they got their foot in the door in a fab shop. And then the ball just kind of gets rolling from there. So how did your story kind of differ? Did you have to go and pack your bags and sleep on anyone's couch, or was it more of like a sports recruitment almost type situation?
So I can only speak on two different ways that it happened for two different teams. So I think I was a sophomore or a junior. So I tore my ACL freshman year at Catawba College, and so that gave me an extra year. So pardon me if I'm incorrect with whether it was my sophomore or junior year. But my godbrother, I was staying with my god family during college for some time. And he played for Powerhouse Football. It's a rec league team here in Mooresville, North Carolina. And the upper level happened to be our pit crew head coach's son's team. And he saw me at practice, and he was like, hey kid, I mean, you're tall, you're bulky, you're strong. Like, what do you do? And he got my background at Catawba. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I've been playing football since I was 7 years old. I would like to go to the NFL, if God's willing. And it's it's kind of, I understood where he's coming from, so it was pleasant. But he was like, hey, so the chances of making the NFL. Like, when you don't make the NFL, let me know so I can give you a call so you can come be a jacket in the NASCAR. And at the time, anytime I heard the word NASCAR, I was thinking, okay, cars going fast, turning left, big ovals. Yeah, the only thing that I knew of substance was 3, 24, and 48. It was just those three numbers that I had any previous knowledge of. And sure enough, 2 years later, he called me. He's like, "Hey, did you make it?" And I was like, "No, I dinged up my ankle. Didn't perform too well." And he was like, "All right, I'll see you in the shop at 7 a.m. Tuesday." And honestly, the story after that, I don't know if we have enough time, but ever since that first day, there's a long road to get to where I'm at now. And that's how it played out for me. Now, Hendricks Motorsports tried to reach out to me through my actual college athletic coaches. And I appreciated it so much, just kind of the luck of the draw of being able to kind of fall in line with Penske. And they ended up being my decision kind of hands down. I was just thankful that Hendricks kind of reached out to me too. But that's how it played out. I just kind of got a little bit lucky, right place, right time, had the right conversation, met the right person, and here we are now on the podcast.
So you don't have to give us super detailed versions, but where, you probably start out just kind of practicing at the shop before they put you on a live car for live pit stops. But I'm going to assume you ended up pitting like an Xfinity car or something along the way before you make your way to the Cup Series.
Oh, yeah. So I have to humbly say that the path that I had to take to kind of get to where I'm at today was very lucky. Everything just kind of happened just for me to be in this position. We had a couple mistakes made that kind of opened up some spots for me to hop into a Cup car very early in my career. Like the first year, I got hired in 2019 in March, and I was on a Cup car with Corey LaJoie on the 32 car. By October, I think I finished the season with those guys, and oh God, just being honest, it was bad. It was performance-wise, it was bad because there's so much that you had to learn as far as being actually in the environment where everything's live. You actually have stuff to lose. It's totally different from practice. So I spent a good amount of time with Corey LaJoie and Go Fast Racing, and things started to really work out once I kind of had like that final reminder, like ask yourself, like, what are you going to do that's better than this at this point in your life? And, I finally stepped into being a true professional in 2021. That was the first year of Next Gen, correct? Like
22, I think, is when.
Yeah.
20, I think when they switched over, yeah. So 21 would have been one more with the 5 looks, I think.
Okay, so 2022 is when everything just became a wildfire for me, and it was just all about kind of taming it as best as you could. So I started pitting for Todd Gilliland on the 38, and a great group of guys. They really made me feel comfortable as far as where I was at in that position. Everybody knew that Next Gen was very new for all of us, and there was a lot of growing pains that were going to come with it. But we ended up putting out some really good work for them. And then that's when the scare across the sport came when it came to losing wheels. It's like, hey, we only got one plug now, so we can lose wheels. And we had a suspension where I did a short 4 weeks on the 2 car with Osinskie and Pocono and a couple of those races. And safe to say, I went out and I performed, kind of showed the big wigs that I could handle the moment, and I was ready for it. And then after that stint, we went to the 21 car with Harrison Burton. We had a couple good weeks with them, and then a wildfire, actually like literally a wildfire left rear one race. That'll always be in my memories as far as the growth path. And then we had a suspension on the 12 car. Sad to say.
Bristol. I was there.
Oh, yeah.
I was at that race. Yeah, that was rough.
I remember it too, and I think that was the first time where my heart kind of dropped into the bottom of my gut. And it was like, okay, I'm the next one in line to kind of, fill in that spot. And once I got in, it was really, I can't give enough credit to the road crew and just Ryan and the other pit crew guys because, when you're coming up as a pit crew member, like usually the people you end up working with already know your story. They already seen the mistakes you made. They've already seen the growth that you made. And as a youngin, kind of hopping into that caliber position, you realize that, okay, there's some pressure here because the way it timed up was I got on the car in playoffs. So it's not like you had some regular season races to kind of get comfortable. Like, no, we need you to come in. We need you to perform right away. And that's kind of where I've strived most of my life is like put me in a pressure situation and I'll find a way to take advantage of it. And sure enough, we had a really good playoff series. Unfortunately, we didn't get to the final round where we wanted to be. But it left just enough on the table for the rest of us to kind of be like, okay, I think now it's safe to say that we've got all the pieces moving where we need to go. And then next season comes along and I think most of the people that be watching here can kind of understand, like we saw that coming into play, and it all started with Charlotte, and that was my first Cup Series win, and that right there kind of showed me like, okay, like this is real deal here, like this dude's got a taste of blood. Ryan's ready to roll, like enough with the words that we've heard about, being too nice or whatever the case may be. It's time to go after it. And we came together as a team and all the way from the small things to, after every meeting, after every workout, it was me who stood in the middle and said, hey, let's break it down. Let's get in here as a group. Let's break it down because we put in a nice body of work here. And, we should celebrate that in unity. And I think that was a small thing that I could contribute to the end goal. And once we got into the playoffs and Talladega happened and Martinsville happened, like when we got to Phoenix, that's when like the huge rush of emotions of the trials and tribulations of learning and kind of being the youngin, hopping into a team. And granted, this is my first season. I could be forever grateful for. I mean, there's not too many players I could say your first season on a Cup car, you went and won the whole shebang. And that just put us on an all-time high as a family and a team. And I think that just makes it so much easier for us to kind of go through races where things don't happen the exact way we want them to. We know that we have the cards in the deck to go out there and get it done again. So that's just a little spill of kind of how it happened for me. I'd say a lot of luck and then a lot of ownership of understanding where you're at and understanding that a good team might just be missing one little piece, two little pieces. Somebody fills in that gap, and you kind of got the whole group, flowing how you want it to. And I think we've shown that as a unit here lately.
So you get recruited, but they decided pretty much right away that you're a jack man. I mean, there wasn't looking at doing some fueling or carrying tires.
No, so. my buddies are probably going to give me a little backlash from this. So when I started I started my career as being a pit crew player in NASCAR. I was 6'3" and about 240, 245. I don't know if Conklin said anything, but so I'm actually 6'3" and 285 pounds now, and it's kind of made my job a whole lot easier. So. Back then, I was the frame. I was the frame for a jackman. I had the height, I had the weight, I had the athletic capability. And if you go back through a lot of the jackmen across the board, there's a lot of jackmen that are tight ends previously, defensive ends, linebackers. There's just a core group of positions in different sports that kind of work out for this position. And it was never a question. I never once did a rep being a carrier or, I'll take that back. Here's a little funniness for the show. So my first race that I ever pitted was for Tanner Gray. and actually went to college with his older brother at Catawba College. He owns a gym now in Mooresville, CrossFit gym, really successful. And so I was a fueler. My first race, just get to the track. Let's see how it works out. You be a fueler. First time the car comes in, we're at Michigan. I remember it like it was yesterday. First time the car comes in, I don't get a lick of fuel in it. It was about as worse as it could be for a youngin'. Like I'm plugged in, everything. I've got freaking Lake Norman on the floor of just fuel, and it was bad. But the next few stops, we got it in, finished it out. But yeah, my first race ever, I was a fueler, and I learned pretty quickly. I was like, I'm not gonna take too much credit away from these guys. It's not an easy deal, right? It doesn't look like a lot of movement, but it's pretty tough. So after that, I think everybody realized, all right, this guy is just a jackman. At least for now, let's not put too much on his plate. So that's how it ended up for me.
So now the jackman though is pretty much, I don't want to use the term quarterback, but the whole pit stop kind of the whole pit stop revolves around what you're doing, correct? I mean, especially with the single lug nut.
Absolutely. So, we take it back to the last couple of years of a 5-lug. We like to use the term pace setter. The pace setter back in 5-lug it was all about your changers, right? Just make the changers' job as easy as they can so they can hit 5 different lugs and different patterns every single time as quick as they can, as efficiently as they can. And let's just make sure that we make decisions based off of when those guys are done. But now that we're in one lug, it's clearly the time that you lose is the gap between when a decision needs to be made and when it's made. So you give a couple tenths because you think the right rear, you could be late on the right rear being done. You're kind of sitting there like, oh man, all right. So the jackman solely lost 3 tenths right there because he didn't make that decision quick enough. Now, I think the biggest difference between 5-lug and 1-lug is the penalty that you get for making a decision too late it's times 10. Like, if you cut it on the 5th lug and you were on time, it could be a tenth or two. But now it's like if you're waiting on 1 lug, it's easily going to be between 3 tenths and 5 tenths, which that's a whole lot more detrimental nowadays, considering everybody's working the same tools in the same game. So I would definitely say it's a healthy term to say that the jackman is a quarterback now. And it's still true though, because your quarterback he's only as good as the players around him, right? I'm just here to kind of facilitate, make decisions based off of everyone else's performance, just so, from start to finish, I know that I've left the least amount of time on the table as possible. So the gap of decision making is so much tighter, but so much more detrimental. And I think that's where some people might miss the change of difficulty in the stops.
And the penalty really grows exponentially, like from just seconds for having to take an extra time to make a decision and let them maybe finish off a lug nut. But if they don't, and you drop the jack and he leaves, then you're worried, or he finds out there's a loose wheel while he's out on track. So just the time to come back down and then tighten it, or disaster strikes and it comes off on the track and you've experienced this before. You're sitting at home, not as long as before, I think, but you're still getting a suspension there. So what's that pressure? I mean, you said you kind of thrive on pressure, but what's that pressure like?
So I definitely like pressure. I think that's where the new avenue of adrenaline comes from with this stop, is understanding like, hey, I need you guys to still do the stop as fast as you can, while still understanding that the penalty is 10 times larger than it was before. And I think that's where a lot of us kind of miss some credit, is like understanding like, hey, the smallest little change could make all the difference. I know they showed a race here previously where one of the winners won by a couple tenths, and then they kind of went back and was like, well, here's the difference between both of their pit crew stops. And that's here or there. There's a lot more that goes in between from the pit stop to actually how many laps you're on the track, which you understand that when you're in the sport. But as a pit crew player, it's like, hey, yeah, what if we did get those couple of tenths? That could have been the difference between second and first for us. So it's the you can't really judge the pressure, right? Because there's a totally different pressure for green flag stops and yellow flag stops. There's a totally different pressure from doing a 10-2 to a 9 flat, which we're starting to see a lot more of those every single race. You're seeing a lot more 8-second stops, which last year or the year before that they thought wasn't going to be a thing for a while. So you definitely have to have a thick skull when it comes to understanding like what there is to lose and understanding how much we need to gain to win. So if you can kind of level out that pressure and kind of keep a strong mindset on what needs to be done, and you just understand like, hey, we're out here to do what we're asked to do, and if it doesn't work out, like that's kind of part of it. Because you sit back and you kind of think like, okay, we got a 400 lap race. Let's say that's probably unrealistic, but let's say we got a 400 lap race and we've got 8 stops. One bad stop out of 8 stops is a whole lot worse for the end goal, as in our driver making a mistake for 1 lap. They've got a lot more opportunities to kind of correct that for us. So we take that to heart and understand the body of work that our drivers have put into being in the position that they're in. And that just kind of accrues a whole nother pressure for us where it's like, let's not damage somebody else's life work. And that's the mindset that I bring to the table when I think about being a jackman / quarterback of the team. Is I like to think about how much I had to put in to be in my position here, but I also like to think of how many laps my driver has put in his lifetime on any kind of track, any kind of car, to be in that position to potentially get us that end goal that we're looking for. And that's where the true pressure is, because now we're not only talking about specific race performance, we're talking about like how much time has this person put into being in here. We need to work so hard as a pit crew to where we can try to catch up to that, to where it's worth just as much for us. So pressure is an understatement. It's not life or death, but I think the best crews out there treat it like every stop is life or death.
What's a week of preparation like now? Do you guys do practice every day, or is there more of like a conditioning type thing every day? I mean, what does like a week look like leading up to a race?
Okay, so Mondays, you're pretty whooped from Sunday, right? Tuesday is more of let's kind of touch base on what kind of car we think we're gonna have. Usually our cars are not set up by then, so Tuesday is kind of like, let's come into practice. Just make sure we're well rested for the amount of time that we have for the quick turnaround. Let's come in, let's pit. We usually start with stops where we're kind of knocking some rust off, and usually we finish the Tuesday off by some pretty sporty stops. We've got our rust out the way, and we're getting confident. We're kind of running through the stops again, and then after that, we usually have a good weight room workout. Just kind of keep us maintained or growing if that's what you need to move on. But before the actual stops, usually we run through film. Just kind of talk about like, hey, this is what happened on this stop. This is how we need to tweak something to fix it, or understand like, okay, that's an issue that we can leave with that race, because you go from a super speedway to an intermediate. Say, okay, our car's not going to be set up that way. Let's come back to it when it makes sense. So Tuesday is kind of like your rebound day. Let's get focused on what we got going on throughout the week. And then Wednesday it's like you spit on an anthill. Like everything's just going fast. Everything is just all over the place, and we want to see where we're at. Wednesday kind of gives us that confidence to really get after it, and that's the joy of practice, right? Is practice, you can go 120 miles per hour doing a pit stop, because if a mistake happened, we're not going to lose a race from it. We're just going to kind of see and get a baseline of what we can do and what we need to kind of take off a little bit in order to bring that to the track. And so Wednesday is kind of let's fly, let's get after it. Same thing, workout. Usually we check the car, kind of see how the setup is, and then Thursday, it's truly a race prep day. It's like okay, we went 120 miles per hour on Wednesday. Thursday, let's go 90% and as clean as we possibly can be, because clean at the racetrack when things are changing, um, shocks are locking up, whatever the case may be, and that car comes in and things aren't moving exactly how they were for us in practice. So Thursday is more so mental preparation while physically getting clean stuff done in order to have that confidence that you need to kind of walk into the weekend and be like, all right, we've got a good idea on what's needed, and we know how to perform here because we're all mentally ready. So Thursday, kind of after that, we're winding down a little bit. Friday, Saturday, family, kind of preparing yourself mentally late in the night for the racetrack. That's pretty much what it looks like every single week in and week out, because you obviously can't take out what everybody else has to do, right? You got bills, you got kids, you got families, you got duties, right? So I think the biggest challenge is being able to stay locked in when you don't have anything to do throughout that Thursday evening, Friday, Saturday, to be able to come into Sunday. But there's one thing that I tell a lot of people that I kind of mentor and coach in the same profession that I'm in is how do we mentally stay locked in through everything that we've got to deal with through the week, because that's the true skill. Anything can happen from Thursday to Sunday, correct? So I think that's the most valuable skill that you can have as a pit crew player, is understanding, okay, I might not work 40 hours a week like other guys, but what I had to lose is a lot more detrimental on the weekend when everybody else is relaxing. So that's pretty much the challenge every single week, is how can we bobble everything you need to do as an adult in order to come out and understand the big picture on Sundays, and everything that we have to lose and everything that we can do to gain. That's the big challenge, and that's what every week looks like.
So for a majority of the 2023 season, I would kind of describe the 12 crew as just being incredibly consistent, but not necessarily always the fastest crew on pit road. But you weren't really ever putting Ryan in bad spots throughout the year, especially during the playoffs. You guys were super locked in. You have the off season. We come into 2024. You guys have kind of been on fire, was what a lot of people would maybe describe, because you've gone from being just super consistent to, I would consider, one of the more elite teams on pit road. You've climbed that leaderboard that kind of gets put out there that I'm sure you guys watch on from week to week. There's points when you've been leading the series and 4-tire pit stop time. You don't have to give away secrets or anything, but what do you think maybe changed, maybe going into the playoffs last year and into this season, that's just, you guys have really clicked to kind of take it to the next level?
Oof. You got to really, when you answer a question like that, you've really got to choose your words wisely, because I think everybody as a public now understands that words can be taken completely sideways.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. And not for the greater good. But I would definitely say last year when we went into the playoffs, and I don't want to be selfish here, but I can only speak, probably 90% for myself. I know mainly for me, it was, okay, when you got on this car in 2022, you got on in the playoffs, and that boosted my confidence level, so much, being able to prove to myself that I can go out there on the big stage and be mistake free and keep our team going exactly where we needed to be or expected to be. And then 2023, it was like, okay, the big goal for all of us was like, let's end the win streak. Let's end the losing streak, which was what, 65 races of a losing streak, or 55?
It was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, too many for the caliber driver that we have. Like I said, Charlotte was a turning point. I think when Charlotte happened, I think that's when everyone realized, like, I think we can believe now that things just didn't line up the way we wanted them to be. But now that we know that it's there and we all kind of got a taste of blood, it was like, okay, there's no question anymore. We know we can do it. let's just go out there and have that mindset every single weekend. Like, there's not a racetrack that we can't win at. And once we got to the playoffs, and I mean, let's call a duck a duck. I mean, Blaney, he made probably one of the craziest moves at Talladega. I mean, just to dive under the 4-car like that, like at that moment right there, next to Charlotte, I was like, oh yeah, Ryan's hungry. He wants it. Like, he made that move when we've seen time, a handful of times before where he might not have made that move because he thought he had the line, but his aggression right there for that move right there, going that fast around that track, next to somebody who's a legend in the sport like Harvick was, or is, sorry. I think that really set a fire under the rest of us to be like, okay, it's time to get after it. We don't have much to lose now, because if we're going to try to win here, we're going to win in the biggest stage, and that's the playoffs. And then Martinsville happened, and he won in dominating fashion. And then Phoenix came, and we've always known that like the last 5 races of the playoffs have been a strong suit for Blaney. Those are just tracks that we've historically been known to be fast at. Conklin said it best. He was like, "We're gonna go win this thing." And I told Steve, I was like, I was worried about kind of getting on the podcast early and kind of putting some stuff in the air, and I kind of let him do it. And that's just kind of where I was as far as mentally. I just really wanted to be locked in. But when it all played out and we actually won, it still took some time to realize, like, oh, I mean, we're a championship caliber team. And we proved it this year. We won when it counted, and we performed as a pit crew when it counted. And, you can go through stops and kind of see, like, where important decisions were made between stops, but none of that really matters when you actually look at the end of the year. And a championship was all we wanted as a group. Now, this year, 2024, the tables flip, right? You're a championship team. You had some talk about saying, it was a fluke, or, you got Blaney fans saying that, it was supposed to happen, which we believe it was supposed to happen because we put the work in. We made decisions every day of the week that was going to put us in that position to win. And it didn't surprise us after it happened. In 2024 now, it's like, okay, we obviously wanted to come out fast. We wanted to come out and probably have a win by now. There's talk about, Ford's not performing the way they wanted to. That seemed to be the struggle for everybody driving a Ford this year. And it gets tricky when you start hearing stuff like that, because you don't want to think about stuff that you don't have control over. That's not going to help us, move forward. But that's one thing about Hassler and about Blaney that they do a really good job at, is keeping everybody grounded as a group, saying that, hey, this might not be what we expected right now. But last year, they had the same thing. Everybody talked about the Fords. And then, boom, swept the series. So it kind of takes some pressure off of our back now, understanding, like, okay, Fords aren't doing what we want them to do right now, but that hasn't stopped us in previous years from, finishing on top. So I think now the biggest motto is find a way to get better every single week, no matter what track that we're at. And winning the championship has done nothing but created a stronger, more stickier glue between crew chief, managers, driver, pit crew, road crew. There's nothing that could break the relationship that we have together. And I think that's the strongest thing that you can have as far as being on a team. There's a big thing that I believe in, and when I got on this team was I want to find the best, quickest route to eliminate pit wall. And I say that because pit wall only divides 2 groups: road crew, pit crew, because we jump over the wall, right? We're on one side. When you divide that wall, you create. When you make that wall disappear, you create a level of understanding between duties, right? Between jobs. Pit crew has a job to go change tires, making adjustments as fast as we can. Road crew has a job of logging details on what we need to do for the pressures or the whatever adjustment we need. What they're focused on is it's a 180 from what we're focused on. When we can eliminate that pit wall, now there's no question on the ability to make the decision. That's how we become stronger. And I think that was the most important thing for us. So if we do something wrong as a pit crew, it's not, oh, you suck. I mean, y'all are killing us. And, there's none of that anymore. And I think a lot of teams could benefit from that, but I'm not going to tell them to do that because we absolutely want to come back for back-to-back this year. So hopefully I stayed on topic there because I get so passionate about answering these questions.
I would say from what some of the road crew guys we've talked to and then pit crew guys too, I feel like that's kind of been mentioned with this team is the fact that, a lot of the road crew guys are longtime guys that have been together. They've been in the trenches. They've won championships or a championship with Logano in the past, and they've gone through crew chief changes. And but the pit crews don't always stay together for long periods of time. And obviously the 12 crew, even when you came in September of that year, I think even early in the year, there had already been changes made that Flores and the carrier comes over from the 2 car to the 12. And so I feel like at least you kind of had that whole year to gel going all the way to the championship. And that had to have done a lot to help kind of build those bonds across the entire crew that's all wearing those, Menards colors every week.
Absolutely.
So I had one question back to just the physical aspects of your job, because if people watch week to week and they watch pit stops, like the technique of a jackman can be a little bit different between teams. And I see some guys do this kind of big swinging movement with the jack, getting around the car. It's kind of like flashy, and they say it's faster. Like, how would you have you attempted any stops like that before, even in practice? And what would you say kind of your technique is on pinning a car?
That's when you get into the real details of what kind of separates you from other people and your position. Now, if you want to talk bias, I can selfishly say that the way that I do it is top of the line. I think you can look at a couple of terms that we use as jackman depending on when do you flip? When do you flip your hand? A lot of people are coming back to the hand behind the handle. We call it the 2-hand snatch.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people want to snatch it and they want to flip their hand to the top of the handle so they can secure tightness on the right front corner. When you can look across the board, and I'm saying this humbly because some people do other things a little bit better, but you look across the board and you want to talk about times and what's actually quicker. Anybody, you put every jackman that flips their hand late, either on the second half of the front of the car or going into the left side peg as I do. Usually runaround speeds, those guys are quicker. Just because it's the mindset of if I'm going to flip my hand early on the right side of the car, I've created a slow moving area around the runaround. So we're talking runaround, right side peg to left side peg. You already got to, when you get to the left side of the car, you've already got to slow down to kind of get your body under control to hit that left side peg with the speed that you want to. So when you flip your hand on the right side of the car, you created another slow area to where I need to focus on, securing my handle tight on the right side. And the amount of time that I have to focus on just my feet as far as running around the car has become substantially shorter. So I can only focus on my feet going around the front of the car. So most of the people that you see that flip late, they've now added another quarter of the runaround to where they can focus on just running. Because when you flip late, you flip your hand when you're already slowing down in the first place. So we've combined two movements into one essentially. But when you talk about pace that certain jackmen use, like there's some jackmen that everything they do is just extremely fast, and I won't say out of control, but you can definitely see when that pace is out of control, because all it takes is for one missed grab or one missed handle cut or whatever the case may be, and you can start to see where the choppiness. My mindset and a lot of the successful jackman mindset is smooth the speed. And I think that works for everybody, even as a driver. Smooth the speed. If you make a decision late coming out of a turn, you're going to lose time. But if you make it early and on time and it's smooth, you're gonna have the lap time that you want. And it's the same thing for us jackmen is smooth the speed. So I think a lot of guys, when we went from five lug to one lug, kind of had that shock of a mindset where it's like, okay, they're expecting the stop to be so much quicker. I need to physically move quicker. But that's not necessarily the case. I think the better analogy is to make the assumption that I need to make a decision quicker. And I think you can do that without physically moving quicker and still shave time. Because the last thing you want to do is be physically out of control. There's obviously certain attributes that certain size jackmen have. Like, you have your 6'1", 240 jackmen that are, probably quicker foot speed. But then you have your jackmen that are my size, that are a little taller and, a good bit heavier that make up speed on the pump. There's different areas where you can kind of take advantage of, but there's one thing, there's one thing that remains the same for all of us in that position is we want to do everything as clean as possible in every attribute, whether that's peg time, peg to pump time, peg to right front time, right peg to left peg runaround time, to left side peg to left rear hang time. Like you can kind of block everything up that we do in those categories right there. And the main goal for all of us is how can we do each one of those separate sections as good as we can. And I think that's really where you start to differentiate really good jackmen from, jackmen that are still coming along.
So are you looking forward to some competition this weekend coming up? Little special competition for positionings?
Oh yeah, there's definitely some bragging rights to be had at a weekend like this. I think pit crew guys take pride in being kind of behind the scenes a little bit. You have some guys that want to strive for more, but when you give us an environment that says, hey, it's about you guys. We want to see what you guys can bring to the table. I think that's when everyone kind of works out a little bit harder, kind of goes to sleep a little bit earlier, eats a little bit better during the week, kind of cuts out some of the extracurricular activities that some might want to do. And you really put all your coins in the same hat and it's like, all right, this is the weekend where, we kind of let people know, like, who's really top dog, because it's kind of hard to do that every single weekend because, you have different car setups, people are physically moving different. You got a certain pit box where you might be coming around a car. It's hard to really showcase top end speed every single weekend. And I think that's just the beauty of how much of a unit you have to be in the sport to be champions or be a successful unit. So a weekend like this, definitely, there's going to be a little bit of jibber jabber on the sidelines, when you're walking past other crews, like, all right, buddy, lace up, because this is what we came here to do. I heard you said y'all did this at practice, and we said we would do this at practice. None of that matters if we don't do it here. So that's the mindset that we're going into the weekend.
Yeah, there's a little redemption that you guys need for this year, because I think last year I ended up with a little bit of a time penalty. I think it had to do with a lug nut last year, but you had top 10 speed as far as stops go. So we're all definitely going to be rooting for you this weekend when it comes to the pit crew challenge for the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. So we got through a lot of the racing questions and your background and everything. But just one more little item to get people to know a little bit more about you. You mentioned you do have a couple days a week to spend with family, relax a little bit. It kind of looks like, from what we understand, you have a little bit of a pastime that involves like fishing. How did you get into that? And do you still keep up with it even during a busy NASCAR racing season?
Oh, absolutely. There's a challenge with being a pit crew guy, understanding how many hours you work a week, because the challenge is finding out how to make the most of the free time that you have. Now, let's say, okay, we'll just put it in simple numbers. You got 40 hours a week. Obviously, there's more than that. But let's say 20 hours a week you work. 20 hours a week you have to do whatever, whether that's be a dad, be a brother, be a fisherman or second job or manager, whatever the case may be. However you manipulate those hours seems to be kind of the final say-so of how you do when you decide to retire in the sport. Now, for me, I'm a big believer in time on the water equals knowledge. I'm so passionate of an angler. I watch every time I get a chance and it's on. I want to watch the Bassmasters, the MLF. I'm watching YouTube to kind of just see who around Lake Norman's been on the water, see what's working for them. Every single time that I'm in the shop, I'm focused on pit stops and usually the rest of that day. But that Friday or that Monday when I can get, sit back and relax, all I'm thinking about is how can I go out and catch that big 5-fish limit bag? That's what I'm thinking about. So that's absolutely my biggest passion outside of being a championship guy again is how can I figure out how to catch them? That's where I want to be. I think it's a peaceful place to be with and it's kind of like being on a pit crew. Like on a pit crew, you've got a couple sections of just maximum adrenaline that you could have, but the rest of the time it's kind of like, oh, you're laid back, you're watching the race and everything's smooth and you're calm, and then boom, car's coming in. Okay, adrenaline's pumping. It's no different than me being on the water. It's like, all right, we're cool, it's calm, it's nice out, we're in a really cool environment, and then boom, fish tugs on the line. Okay, same thing, I'm ready to go. So yeah, that's definitely my biggest hobby and biggest passion outside of here is the big goal for me is when I'm done with this, I would love to be on TV catching big bass on the Bassmasters trail or whatever the case may be. But I love the water, I love fishing, I love the science behind it. I love being able to battle against something that's not human, if that sounds weird. But I love the detail that's incorporated in the sport of fishing. The only thing that's holding me back right now is I got to get a boat. Got to get a boat, but man, they're not cheap. They are not cheap. So once I get a boat, I'll really be able to dive into it and put some more time into it. But I'll never be able to put as much time into it as I need to until my knees and my lower back say, hey, it's time for you to stop pitting cars.
I think you need Ryan to win one of those races down at Homestead. Maybe you can get him to get that boat that the winner gets. I've seen those in Victory Lane a few times. Maybe you can tell him, hey man, that's all I want right there. It's just that boat.
Yeah, that's it. I'll just tell Ryan, but hey man, just be a co-angler with me. Like, let me run the front of the boat. Like, keep it in your name. You take care of it. Let's just go out here and win. But he's a good guy. I wouldn't put it past him.
Well, Jourdan, really just want to thank you for coming on, giving us the time, letting us get this opportunity to help tell your story. And I know for Steve and I, congratulations on being the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion, especially relatively earlier in your career. From all the way you've answered all these questions and described, your work ethic, you definitely deserved it. And this crew, especially what they've been through over the last couple of years and how you guys have come together, really all deserved it. So thank you for that.
I really appreciate it, guys. I know it was a long time coming for me to be on here, but like I said, mentally last year I was just so locked in. I don't want to put anything in the air to jinx anything, and I think that made this conversation all the better. Just knowing that we could kind of talk about what the great things that happened last year. So I really appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah, so good luck the rest of the season, and hopefully you'll be celebrating in Victory Lane soon with Ryan Blaney and the rest of that 12 crew. So that was Jourdan Osinskie, Jackman for the number 12 Ford Mustang Dark Horse for Team Penske on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit. Well, Steve, it is always fantastic, I say it every single time, to get to know a little bit more about these men and women that work for Team Penske, work on Team 12, get to tell a little bit about their story. So many interesting backgrounds, especially with Jourdan's background in athletics, like a lot of modern pit crew members have to have in order to compete for elite teams. And thought he had some really great and interesting stories to tell and some answers to our questions. And that brings us now to this upcoming weekend. the NASCAR All-Star Race weekend from North Wilkesboro Speedway, headed back there for the second year in a row at the historic track in Wilkes County. Things kick off on Friday, May 17th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Cup Series All-Star Race practice at North Wilkesboro. You can catch that on FS1, again, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. Followed at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you have NASCAR Cup Series All-Star Open qualifying in the All-Star Race Pit Crew Challenge, also on FS1. Then Saturday, you're going to want to tune in at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Bright Brand 250 at North Wilkesboro on FS1. And then 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Cup Series All-Star Heat Races. And sorry, Steve, it's listing for now FS2 for that. So people might have some challenges tuning into heat races depending on your cable package and access. So that's all on Saturday. And then Sunday, May 19th, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the NASCAR Cup Series All-Star Open on FS1. Followed at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the main event, a 200-lap feature event for the NASCAR All-Star Race, also on FS1. The format for this year's All-Star Race. Again, the main event is going to be 200 laps. There's going to be a break at the halfway point, lap 100. They're doing a little bit different with tires this weekend. There's going to actually be 3 different types of tires available. Hopefully, they only have to use 2 of these. The first one is going to be the prime tire, which is like the standard base slick tire that they take to short tracks. The second set is going to be what they're calling an option tire. And what Goodyear says they've done with this, they've taken the compound that they use for the wet weather tires that they used in heat races last year, and they use at road courses and stuff when it rains and they're trying to get back out on track. That tire usually burns off pretty quick, and those are groove tires. This is going to be more of a slick, but with that same tire compound. So we're going to see what happens here. So that's the option tire. The third option that they could use in this race, if weather is an issue, is the standard wet weather tire that's grooved that they used in the heat races to try to get back racing and put on some really great heat races last year in this event. From what I understand, the Cup Series guys, they do have to start the All-Star race on the option tire. And then after that, I think it's up to them. They're going to have 4 sets of tires, 2 options, 2 what they're calling the prime tires, which is the regular tires that will be available for this event. Qualifying is going to be a little bit different this year. So last year, the qualifying was all set on pit stop. So there's a pit crew challenge. So it was set solely on pit stops. There's a timing line in the spot behind, in the box entering your box, and then there's a timing line on the box out of your box. So the times are a little bit longer. Last year, it was just the pit crew, their time. The 54 team won the pit crew challenge. The 12 team had a total stop, including those, further timing lines of 13.8, which would have been 7th on the board last year, but they got a 5-second penalty for, I think the lug nut wasn't fastened all the way, and they ended up qualifying 19th. Difference this year, they're going back to a qualifying format that they've kind of had in the past. They've done this at Charlotte and in some other places. I think they even did it at Texas when the 12 team, I think, finished second in the pit crew challenge there. Brian will go out. He'll make a hot lap, qualifying lap around the track. He'll come in to pit road. I think there's going to be 2 different pit boxes that are assigned for the pit crew challenge. He's going to pull into one of those boxes. They're going to make a 4-tire pit stop with the simulated fuel. Chris is going to come up with an empty fuel can basically and engage it and disengage it as he would as if he was fueling the car. Ryan will come back out of the pits, and I think he has to make another lap around or lap at least to a certain timing line, and then that will be the qualifying time. So it'll include the lap plus the pit stop, and that will qualify you for your heat races. I believe the pit stop time on its own is going to decide pit selection. So a lot of this might sound kind of confusing, but they do try to add the pit crew members into these things. So that adds a little extra wrinkle into things. All-Star weekend. Any quick thoughts on tires, qualifying changes? I didn't mention Ryan started the race in 11th and finished 6th last year. So did pretty well. track's going to be totally different though, because they did repave the whole thing. So if you remember in last year's race, there was parts of the asphalt that were coming up and they had to keep repairing throughout the weekend. So they bit the bullet and went ahead and dug the track up and repaved it. So speeds look like they're going to be pretty fast compared to last year, but the 12 team did in the end run really well.
How many segments did they having this year with the actual?
I believe it's just going to be the halfway break.
Just a halfway break. Okay, so that's the only thing like the tires. If you start out on that tire, and they don't have a caution, you're all going to have to run that tire to the halfway break. So, with the pavement being, with the pavement being new, it won't wear as much. But you're going to have to really. It's going to end up looking a little bit like Bristol. You're going to end up having to be careful, like not wearing your stuff out. And that should be really interesting, And then, of course, at the halfway break, they'll all put the regular ones on at that point because they don't want to go through that again. So if they go caution-free for both the segments, it should be really interesting, a lot of fun to watch. If they have some cautions, that strategy is definitely going to come into play of what to do, and don't use up. Because if you use up both your regular sets and you get to the end of the race and there's another caution and you have no regular set sitting there, and then you got to go to the other tire, and then it could be a lot of fun. It should be fun to watch. It kind of it reminds you of Formula One with the different tire compounds that Formula One does, and giving them a rule where they have to use one of them at least makes it interesting too, because most of these guys would trick the system somehow. The crew chiefs would figure out a way to not use a certain tire if they could. So, it should make it a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think one of the last times back at Charlotte, or I'm not sure even the one that they ran at during the pandemic at Bristol, they did put an option tire out there, but I think nobody used it. So this one, at least they're forcing them to use it right out of the gate. It's saying, again, by using that compound, the same rubber from the wet weather tire, it's a softer tire with more grip and designed to have faster wear. The lettering, the Goodyear Eagle lettering on the tires will be yellow on the prime tires, which again are the standard tires. It's going to be red on the option tires, which again is that wet weather compound tire that won't have the grooves. And it will be white on the wet weather tires that ideally maybe we won't have to see, because I'd like for them to get in a nice, clean, weather-free all-star weekend, but that remains to be seen. Again, Ryan had some great runs in the All-Star race in the past. Again, at totally different tracks. He went to victory lane just barely at Texas Motor Speedway in 2022. It was actually it was Ryan and Jonathan's first win together, even though it wasn't a points win. And the only win the time they visited victory lane that season as well. Obviously, we know what happened in 2023. So he's going to be driving that same paint scheme, Wrangler on the hood and Menards on the rear. So it's going to be kind of a standard Menards car this weekend with Wrangler on the hood. So that should be hopefully maybe it'll bring him some good luck again, some good mojo from that Texas win. I'm staring at my diecast right now with the confetti all over it. Hoping we can see that. Kyle Larson won this race last year. Another wrinkle for Kyle Larson. I think unless there's weather in Indianapolis, Kevin Harvick is going to be practicing Larson's 5 car this weekend, as Larson's supposed to be at Indianapolis qualifying and practicing for the Indianapolis 500. So that'll be something to watch this weekend, and then everything that plays out with that next week as they go into the Coca-Cola 600. So again, if you want to tune in this weekend, there's lots to watch on TV when it comes to the Cup Series, just because of these extra practice and qualifyings and challenges and opens. So Friday, you got practice again, 4 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. You got qualifying in the Pit Crew Challenge at 5:30 on Friday. Saturday, you can watch the truck race at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. 5 p.m. and on FS2 is the heat races. So the Cup Series cars will be on track on Saturday night for the heat races on FS2. And then Sunday, 5 p.m., and it's the All-Star Open. So that's going to be all the drivers that haven't won races, haven't won the championship or anything like that, to advance into the All-Star race itself. That's at 5 on FS1. 8 p.m. is the main event, 200 laps, North Wilkesboro Speedway for the All-Star race on FS1. Well, Steve, great episode. Overall, I think like we got to vent some of our frustrations early on, got to interview another cool guest. We got to talk All-Star Weekend. We got to talk another successful week in fantasy racing for me, not so successful for you. So I'm going to chalk that up to being a great episode of the Team Blaney podcast. And I want to thank you and everyone else for tuning in to this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. We also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So, for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Omaha. Omaha. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.